Nice to see you, everyone. We're going to start out our webinar panel today with a lightning round of warm-up questions as everybody is entering into the chat and entering into the panel here. So I'm going to go ahead and screen share and get your typing fingers ready. Okay, so question number one. And this is a quick type it into the answer or into the chat box if you wouldn't mind. And wrong answers are totally okay. We're just going to go through this really fast. So, in what language was the first book published? Your choices are Gaelic, German, Spanish, or English. I see some excellent answers coming in. Oh my gosh, lots of right answers. If you said German, you are correct. Nice work. All right, our next question, type it into the chat. There are more or less questions. So there are more or less people in the world who have learned English as their second language than there are native speakers. Go ahead and type it into the chat. I think you guys are cheating today. Lots of right answers. That's true. It's more. There are more people in the world who have learned English as their second language than there are native English speakers. Good work, guys. All right, next question. Basque is a language spoken in the mountains between which two countries? Your choices are Germany and Prague, Italy and France, or France and Spain. Oh, lots of good answers coming in. And if you're watching the recording, just think about the right answer. Correct, a lot of you, France and Spain. Nice work. All right, our next question. On average, people use a few hundred what in daily conversation? Words, sh sounds, consonants, or clicking sounds? What do you guys think? Type it in. I'm watching the chat. This is looking good. Yeah, just words. We use a few hundred words in daily conversation. So I think that tells you just how important language is, right? All right. Physical contact is completely normal when speaking which language? Is it Arabic, Spanish, French, or Chinese? What do you guys think? Go ahead and type it into the chat. This is our last question. I see lots of good answers coming in. This one feels a little subjective potentially. All right, the answer is Spanish. Thank you guys for typing that in for our lightning round of warm-up language questions. Thank you to takelessons.com for their language trivia. All right. My name is Amber Ayton, and my pronouns are she, her. I am the Alumni and Donor Relations Officer for USAC, or the University Studies Abroad Consortium. So, just a quick story. When I was abroad in Thailand, I learned just enough Thai to really get around. But I soon realized first just how welcomed and appreciated even my small language efforts were to me. But especially important, as I quickly found out, were keywords for ordering food. And I'm sure our panelists can attest to this type of story, right? Specifically from street market vendors at that. So, if you're familiar, Thai food is notoriously spicy. And so the phrase Pat Nit Noi was my go-to Thai phrase, which means spicy small, to which the locals would often respond with a little bit of laughter and say, oh, farong, farong, which of course is an endearing way in Thai to say foreigner, which I equally appreciated very much. But whether you're hoping to pick up just a few words for your adventure abroad or dive fully into language learning, I know today's panel will inspire you. So thank you all for joining today. On behalf of USAC, I would like to welcome you to our 40th anniversary year. USAC has inspired more than 60,000 students to study abroad, building their cross cultural empathy and encouraging them to fearlessly explore not only who they are, but their place in a global society. International education opens the door to the world and leaves students with a new perspective and understanding of cultures, people, and themselves. In particular, being able to engage in another language makes interpersonal connections with native speakers that much more meaningful. For today's panelists, language learning has been central to their lives. We'll hear more about their journeys, and we'll also give you actionable postgraduate guidance to deepen your skills and intercultural connections. Today's discussion is part of a series of career and cultural workshops that we offer each term. And I'm happy to share that my USAC colleague, Smriti Chabra, will be moderating today's discussion. Feel free to jump in if you have something to add to the discussion. If you have specific questions, please post them in the chat bar. We would also like to respectfully invite all in attendance today to optionally share your pronouns. Now, I'd like to introduce USAC Resident Director and my co-moderator today, Smriti Chabra.
Just a quick thing, could you stop sharing the screen so I can see the speakers and everything in grid view, please?
Absolutely. One moment.
Thank you, Brent. And thank you, Amber. Hi, everyone. I am Smriti Chabra. My pronouns are she and her. I am USAC's Resident Director for the Bengaluru program in India. And my language story is, I grew up learning English and Hindi. I had to learn to read and write Telugu in school, which is a regional language. And my parents are Punjabi. So while I don't speak Punjabi fluently, I understand it very well. So I know 2 full languages and 2 half languages, if that's a thing. I also dabbled with French and Spanish in college, but never pursued it completely. But who knows, after today's session, I might get inspired to. By the way, a fun fact, India has 23 official spoken languages, and it is very common for people here to speak 2 or more languages. English is primary in a lot of places though. Anywho, we have a great panel with us this evening, and I'm looking forward to learning about the role language played in their journeys. Amber, we can't hear you.
Thank you, Smriti. Our panelists will now introduce themselves. First, we have Simona Lai, our USAC Resident Director in Reggio Emilia, Italy. Simona, will you please take a minute to introduce yourself?
Yes, thank you very much. Ciao a tutti. Hello, everyone. My name is Simona Lai, and I'm the Resident Director for the USAC program in Reggio Emilia, Italy. I'm Italian. I'm a mom of a beautiful 8-month-old baby boy. I speak English, German, and some French, and I'm very happy to be here today to share my stories and my passion for foreign languages. Just to give you more information about myself, I have been working with USAC since 2009, first in our program in Torino, which is my hometown, where I served as Italian language instructor, program assistant, and internship coordinator. Then I moved to Reggio Emilia in 2015 to be in charge of the USAC Reggio Emilia program. I have a degree in foreign languages for linguistic and cultural mediation, a master's in foreign languages for international communication, an advanced graduate certification in foreign language teaching, and then a professional development certificate in women's leadership and development. I studied abroad in Germany multiple times, where I had the opportunity to improve my language skills while I was completing my degree. All of these international experiences help me to have a new perspective on the world, find my dream job, and better guide my students throughout their study abroad experience in Italy. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Next, we have Erin Welchel, the Outreach Manager of ACTFL. Erin, please introduce yourself.
Thank you, Amber. Hello, everybody. My name is Erin Welchel, and I speak French. My pronouns are she, her. So as Amber mentioned, I'm the Outreach Manager at ACTFL. And if you aren't aware, ACTFL is a membership organization primarily for language educators and administrators, all languages at all levels of instruction. So we have members in all 50 states around the country and also about 50 countries around the world who participate. And we cover about, well, they represent about 60 languages total. So at ACTFL, my job is to manage the Lead with Languages campaign. It's a public awareness campaign that we launched in 2017. So we're about 5 years into it now. And it was a way to reach out, and it still is, to students and their families and other language advocates. So if they're looking for which language they should study, what are the benefits of different languages or language learning in general, how do we locate some funding to support our studies? How do we support a local program with advocacy initiatives? It's kind of a one-stop hub for all of these resources, and it's free for you to use. It's called leadwithlanguages.org. My personal background, I did not study abroad because I was a transfer student, so I needed so many semesters on campus. But immediately after college, I participated in the French government's TAPIF program, the teaching assistant program in France. And so I taught English in France from 2009 to 2012. And I'm happy to share any resources that we can to help you all get that next step and continue your language journey.
Thank you, Erin. Next up, we have Felix Pirat, USAC alumnus of our 2011 Torino, Italy program.
Thank you for the introduction, Amber. So my language journey has been rather, well, let's say, more messy than not. So I will put it simply, while my travels have not been conducive to obtaining fluency, with the one exception of Polish, I'm able to speak Czech, German, French, and Slovak at various conversational levels, and used to do so with Spanish and Italian, the latter, of course, which I learned in the beautiful city of Torino, which you should all visit. But unfortunately, I have struggled to maintain it at a very good level. But hopefully that will change in the future. So in addition, various points in the past, I learned the basics of Wolof, Greek, and Swedish from lessons or apps, and recently started learning Irish, Gaelic, and Croatian. And apart from that basic summary, I would say that I'm a firm believer in the idea of other languages unlocking other sides to people's personalities. It's a romantic idea, but a very big motivational one, if one's interested in self-knowledge and that kind of thing. And whatever is conveyed by my contributions to this panel, I hope that at the very least that will be conveyed. So I think that's everything. Thank you.
Wonderful, thank you. Finally, we have Brent Coulter, USAC alumnus of our 2011 San Sebastian, Spain program and our 2012 Chengdu, China program.
Thanks, Amber. Hey guys, my name is Brent. I'm 30 years old and I am a lawyer. I work for Meta, aka Facebook. I'm currently living in Mexico. I've spent 7 years of my life living abroad, thanks to USAC as like a foundation. I studied abroad in San Sebastian, as mentioned, for a semester, and then came back, finished a degree in philosophy, went abroad. I had studied abroad in China, and then while I was there in China for study abroad, I actually ended up making connections with the university in China and applied for a fellowship there. And I got a full ride to go do graduate studies at Sichuan University in Chengdu. And then I ended up building a career in China as like a US-China policy advocate working for the American Chamber of Commerce. I came back to the United States, into Silicon Valley, moved my career over into tech because I think it's just interesting to be part of new horizons, and got a degree. I went to law school. I got a legal degree, Juris Doctor. And then, so my life is right now trying to find this nexus between globalism and languages, technology, and the law. So I really want to help people and inspire people. I want you to know that if you're on your language journey, it's like a lifetime commitment. So you have to figure out ways to be able to like constantly engage with language, and that's what my life has been. And I probably will spend the majority of the rest of my life traveling, and because I really value mobility and being a global citizen. So I posted my LinkedIn and a little intro about me. Feel free to reach out. Super approachable. I know we only have an hour here, so I'll keep it short. But if you have any specific questions for me, feel free.
Thank you, Brent. Thank you all for those introductions. Let's dive in. But before we get started, I'd love to know the languages that we speak here as a group. So Amber, we're going to share a question on the screen, and I will ask you all to pull out your cell phones, pull up your camera or a QR code scanner, and scan the code on the screen and type in your answers.
Smartphone, so no QR scanning for me, but I will very curiously listen, if that's all right with you.
Wow, I love all those languages on the screen. It feels like a mini UN here. I see Chinese script as well. That's you, Brent.
That's me. Yeah. We were talking yesterday, like one of the things about being a multilingual person who constantly engages in foreign languages is the amount of keyboards you have on your phone, to the point where my autocorrect doesn't even work anymore because it just assumes that I'm speaking another language or something.
We do have some other language. Wow, this is a lot of languages. I wish I could count and tell you how many. Maybe we can do that later. But thank you all for sharing your responses here. I love to see all these, so many languages out here. So starting in, I'm going to start with an opening fun question for everybody. And the question is, if you can share your favorite quote, phrase, or word in a language other than English, and then tell us what it means in English. So I'm going to start with mine. My favorite phrase that I know in multiple languages, "Mujhe bhook lag rahi hai," "Je faim," "Tengo hambre," "O fame." In English, all this means I'm hungry. I like to make sure I can eat in every country I travel. But let's start with you, Erin. Tell us your favorite quote, phrase, word from another language.
I'm fascinated by language and different words that we encounter, and especially those words that don't have a direct translation or are difficult to translate into another language. And so this changes throughout the year as I come across the next one. And I've just finished reading Sophie Fontanelle's latest novel in French called Capitale de la Douceur. And so this word douceur has just been in my head throughout the past few weeks. And in English, it means literally sweetness, like something that tastes sugary. Or it can be more figurative, that it's a sweetness in a person, or a kindness, a gentleness, a softness. And so in this book, she's talking about how we can use that kind of human sweetness we have to counteract some of the violence in the world. So that seems apropos right now, but that's my latest, la douceur.
Oh, that's a lovely thought. Thank you for sharing. Next up, Felix, could you share with us your favorite quote or phrase or word that you have?
Absolutely. So I think you and I would sympathize a lot over words for "I'm hungry." In the case of Czech, it's "mám hlad," where I'm at. But my personal favorites tend to be culture-specific untranslatables, those that don't really have any other uh, direct meaning in either English or another word. So a lot of these tend to be related to literature. So an example in French, to use the language Aaron mentioned, is a Dumasien, related to the novels of Alexandre Dumas, author of The Count of Monte Cristo, greatest novel in history. But personal favorite I will share is from Czech, and it's from this novel called The Good Soldier Švejk, great Czech novel. And they have the word Švejkovina, which is interesting because it relates to the character of Švejk, but it's a noun, whereas usually in English we have adjectives like Orwellian or Kafkaesque. So yeah, words like that float my boat.
That's wonderful. Thank you. Simona, could you share your favorite word, language, or word phrase, or anything from another language?
Yes, so I can share four words in Italian that actually they represent my professional journey, my learning and professional journey. These are pazienza, costanza, metodo, scelte. So these are my favorite words. It means passion, determination, method, choices. And when I was at the university, one of my professors used to tell us these keywords, saying that in order to be successful in life and achieve your goals, you need to be patient, determined, motivated, and committed. And therefore, you need to make choices and always try to follow your instinct in order to achieve your goals. And this phrase helped me a lot, especially studying foreign languages and also in my career or in difficult moments in general in life. So that's why I wanted to share with you.
Wow, that's inspiring. Thank you. Brent, the same question to you. Do you have a favorite?
Yeah, I can't remember the exact Chinese idiom. There's so many Chinese idioms that are amazing. One of them, though, it was a seed is just a seed until it touches water. And it represents this idea that without experience, you can't really grow, and that you really don't know what you don't know. And I think that's why I value so much studying abroad, is because it gives you that platform to experience. It's the water that you need to grow. And that's my favorite.
Wow, thank you. My next question is to you, Simona. This is to learn about your language learning journey, where it started. So where did your language learning journey begin? Why was it important to you? And what were the challenges you faced while learning a new language?
Okay, it's a long question, so prepare for a long answer.
Yes.
Well, I decided to study foreign languages when I was a child. I remember I was on an airplane with my family for the first time, and I remember I was fascinated to see the flight attendants speaking multiple languages. I started to dream of becoming an air stewardess so that I would have had the opportunity to always travel to different places, meet new people from different countries and learn new languages. And also, I was always curious every time that I could hear people speaking a language different than Italian, because I really wanted to understand what these people said and have the opportunity to interact with them. But unfortunately, in the 90s, the language learning was, of course, more difficult and expensive than today, because we didn't have the strong international exposure that we have today. So we have to rely on textbooks for practicing what we were learning from our teachers in class. Also, if you wanted to practice your language skills, you just had the opportunity to request your teachers, for example, for a pen friend, or what we used to call amico di penna from abroad. Technology was not as advanced then as it is now. So we couldn't use many of the resources available today, such as the internet, apps, online classes. Then when I started the high school, I had the opportunity to study 3 languages, English and French, that were mandatory, and then a third language that I could choose amongst German and Spanish. I opted for German because I love the sound, I love the culture of this language, and in my opinion, so at that time it was an excellent language for professional careers. Anyways, my passion for foreign languages became stronger and stronger, especially because I noticed that I was finally able to understand, for example, the lyrics of my favorite songs in English, or I was able to translate correctly long paragraphs in German or French, or, for example, read books in a language different than Italian. And I started to feel very proud of myself. I also discovered that reading books in a foreign language is not only great for making progress, but it is one of the most rewarding, rewarding aspects of the learning experience, because it exposes you to all sorts of vocabulary that you won't find in a day-to-day life conversation, and normalizes otherwise complicated grammatical structures. Then when I studied abroad, I got for sure, so this important international exposure that helped me to practice my language skills and become more confident in a different language. As I said before in my introduction, I studied abroad in Germany multiple times. But the very first time that I studied abroad, I spent 11 months in Germany, and I completed all the courses I needed to graduate there. All of my classes were taught in German, but at that time my skills were not high enough when I arrived. So it took me at least 4 months to become familiar with the pronunciation and start speaking correctly. I remember, for example, that I studied a lot and I immersed myself. I tried to immerse myself in the culture. I always took the opportunity to speak German, and I also decided to share an apartment with 2 German girls who became my best friend. And we are still in touch after almost 17 years. It was not always easy. Also because especially the very first time when, for example, I went to the restaurant, I used to go to the restaurant ordering food, and the waiter laughed at my pronunciation. Or, for example, every time that I have to deal with bureaucratic procedures, such as sign a housing contract or open a bank account, and I didn't know what to do, I didn't have the exact words in that language. I always try, anyways, to be proactive. I always, sorry, I always had a small dictionary with me. I always ask for help, and I ask a million questions until I was sure I understood everything correctly. And yes, then for sure, living in a country, living abroad complemented what I was learning in the classroom, because the verb charts, the vocabulary, the books, and the role play activities with my classmate helped me to become familiar with the language. But the local people, the people that you that you meet in the country, and also the different culture help me to better understand the language and all of its nuances. And so reflecting on my learning journey, I'm grateful for all the experiences and challenges that I have to face while I was studying foreign language, because they enable me to grow as a person for sure and increase my knowledge in German or English or French. So what I learned is the importance for sure studying with passion, with intention and commitment in order to improve skills, your language skills, and become more fluent.
Thank you, Simona. That was a very insightful journey. Erin, my next question to you. Could you share what it felt like the first time you felt confident in a language skill?
Sure. I'll share that it didn't happen right away. I started learning French in ninth grade in Pennsylvania in high school. It was the first time it was available to learn a language in our district. And I loved it, but I was someone who wasn't terribly confident with my language skills, speaking in front of other people in the classroom. So to the point where I would hyperventilate and almost pass out in the class, just wasn't good at talking in front of other people. But I loved it so much, I continued with it through college. And my French teacher in high school, it always goes back, I must have been 16 or 17 years old. And she saw this where like daily I would come in and kind of collapse on a desk at some point. And she said to me, you're going to move to France and live there one day. And I said to her, thank you so much for your confidence in me and thinking these big dreams, but like, no, that's not going to happen. I don't have the means to do that. And I really don't see this working out, speaking in front of with French people, like, I don't know. She said to me, no, one day you'll move to France. So I went to college, I learned French again. And immediately afterwards did the TAPIF program where I moved to France for 3 years. And I would say within a week of my being on the ground in France, maybe because it just had to happen then, the confidence kicked in sort of out of an adrenaline rush. It was very difficult, like Simona said, when you're in a new place and you've got all of these administrative tasks that all of a sudden come upon you and you don't have all of the words. And so it was starting the bank account, working the first week. I met a lot of real estate agents. I was trying to find an apartment. I didn't know anyone. It wasn't a study abroad program, but it was my first time ever on an airplane or even outside of kind of my home state by myself, outside of college. So there was a lot to handle all at once. And so I called home and my mother gave me very good advice. She said, just stay there for a month and see how it turns out. You can get through a month. I had my apartment that first week. I finally found it. She said, just, take a tour of the local historic center. And so I went to the historic center and the tourist center and booked myself any of the free tours I could take that first week. My job hadn't quite started yet, so I had some free time. And I thought this is a good way to practice your French and just get around. And so that first week, I wound up through the tour at the local library that had a program connected to the mayor's office where local children had to come through a rare book room once, I think in their like third grade class or second grade class throughout the year from all the local schools where I would be teaching later in the year. And so they had to look at these rare manuscripts in this book room. And I'd worked with rare books in college, so I was excited about this and started talking to the curator. And by the end of our conversation, he had offered me in French a role teaching the calligraphy workshop for these children so that he could show them the rare books and kind of cut the class in half because it was a lot of children touching manuscripts. And so he would take half the class to look at the rare books and give them this workshop in French. That was the collection of Louis Médard, who was a fabric commerçant back in the day, 1800s. And I would take the other half of the class and teach them Carolingian minuscule calligraphy in the adjoining room in French. And so this is kind of where the French confidence kicked in, where all of a sudden this person who was the very educated curator believed in what I was doing. The teachers of all these students who were coming in and out could speak with me in French enough. I'd learned all the words about Carolingian minuscule and the nibs and the pens and inks. And I got my wonderful nickname for my first year in France. And everyone quickly in the chat, you know what this is in English, they called me La Schtroumpf. Does anyone know what La Schtroumpf would be? It's an unusual word. I didn't know it at the time. It's the Smurfette, one of those little blue cartoon characters, because the children would knock over their ink pots and I would just be covered in blue ink by the end of the day.
I love that story and I love that name. Thank you. My next question is to you, Felix. What was your study abroad decision-making process? Did you select your location based on the language you were learning, or did you choose to learn the language after you chose your location? Like, what order did it flow in?
Yeah, so, if I'll be honest, there wasn't actually a lot of decision-making process. I don't know how unusual that is when it comes to somebody choosing their study abroad program, but at the same time, if you just sort of intuitively know, I think there's nothing wrong with that. But long ago, back when I was a little Ike, I was challenged to learn the name and capital of every country. And so after that, I spent lots of time learning about other places around the world, including the beautiful city of Turin. And then at Humboldt State, which was my alma mater, beautiful place, I saw the program in a brochure. And as soon as I saw the program in Turin, I just knew I wanted to go. It was frankly that simple. But of course, it wasn't only that. My degree was in international studies. I wanted to be a diplomat, and their focus on international business was a plus. And it was a good compromise between a popular country like Italy for studying abroad and being in a part of Italy that is less visited, but very underrated, especially underrated, I would say. It is also a living city where not everybody spoke English. To quote one story, when I was visiting Florence, which was a good time, just a weekend though, I was with my friends, we were ordering a coffee, and I said, "Vorrei una cappuccino per favore?" And the waitress gave this huge sigh of relief. "Oh, thank you. Somebody not speaking English." It's the funniest thing in the world. And I've never seen that anywhere else. But it goes to show, the benefits where you sort of go somewhere that's a bit off the beaten track. No disrespect to the beautiful city of Florence, but it's not conducive to learning a lot of English there in the way that Turin is. And as for the language, I didn't really know much Italian except for a few basics and what I understood from knowing Spanish, which is similar, not the same, but similar. But it was rewarding to learn it there. I learned the basics before. This old lady from Padua taught me the basics at Humboldt. But it was actually, in a way, more rewarding to sort of learn it on the spot, because as soon as I learned what I learned, I could then apply it in the actual country to better consolidate my knowledge, which is more difficult when you're outside of that language sphere. So as rewarding as it is to, just roll off the airplane and be fluent right away, and it is rewarding, this approach was a lot more fun and interactive, I found. So now that I'm learning my next new language, Croatian, I'm hoping to do the same thing this summer with interesting results, perhaps. So to make a long story short, I didn't know the language beforehand and just winged it.
I like that idea. It's fun to wing it sometimes. Just go with the flow where it's taking you. Thank you.
No problem.
Brent, my next question is to you.
Yo.
What surprised you about learning a language where it's spoken natively? I know you've spoken and studied language in a lot of places. So what was so special about it? What surprised you? And if USAC was there in any of those locations, how did they help you learn those languages?
Oh my God, I don't even know. I feel like the whole process is just a constant surprise. I guess, again, going back to what I was saying of you don't know what you don't know, I think learning Mandarin was just the biggest eye opener for me, because you have to learn the different schools of thought in China, like Taoism, Confucianism, Buddhism. You walk around and every day it's why is this person doing this? Or why did this Chinese friend of mine act this way? And in Western culture, it's pretty easy to deduce to the root value of that person and figure out what was motivating their action. But in China, it's just such a radically different world from the Western world that you have to really collect so many pieces of information through language and culture and just experience to really get to the bottom of why people do certain things. So I guess I just didn't really know what to expect, but I knew that living in China for many years was going to be impactful on me. And I think I'm still learning from that. But I think the most beautiful, surprising thing that I learned was that conforming in Chinese society isn't a bad thing. It's actually something that you kind of accept, and it kind of frees you up. Learning how to be in a group and allow for space. Westerners, we love filling up space. We have huge egos, especially in North America, and we're just taught to kind of sell ourselves. And so learning how to be humbled and just sit back and be a part of a group, and let that group dynamic kind of build on itself, as opposed to being at a dinner and just talking one-on-one to someone here and then switching over. Learning how to do that and kind of exist in this communal way, for me, was the biggest mind-blowing thing ever. Just humbling, absolutely humbling. If there's one word that I can use to describe my China experience, it would be humbled. for sure. So that surprised me.
Thank you, Brent. That was great. We are humbled by your story. um, Erin, my next question is for you. How can one continue to practice language after they've come back to their home country? And what postgraduate opportunities available to continue enhancing their language skills?
Sure. I think something that's really important to think about is that, and we've all mentioned this so far, that language learning is a lifelong journey, or it's best thought of as a lifelong journey. And when we take out those requirements of, I want to do this for 2 years or 4 years, and we just think about building proficiency and building experience and learning about the culture more and more, it frees us to kind of think of the bigger perspective. So of course, you're not going to stop learning your language once you've had that abroad experience. You only want to build on it. And I think when you open your eyes to that, you're going to find there are local opportunities. So whether that's a local embassy, if you're living in a city that's going to have events, you can go online and find some meetup conversational groups. I've done a bunch of these in DC and New York, for example, for French language. It's been a great way to meet new friends. And then there's also local businesses and restaurants where you're able to use your language skills if you just start looking for them. I have a lot of students on the Lead with Languages blog. Several of them have mentioned like Asian grocery stores or supermarkets where they're able to have a part-time job and learn those, different skills. Other things that you can do would be to consider fellowships. Another way maybe to go back abroad if you've done a study abroad experience as an undergraduate. You're thinking of something after graduation. For example, in my experience, I couldn't study abroad. And so I built those skills abroad completely after I had graduated. So whether it's the TAPIF program through the French government, the US government offers several fellowships, whether that's a Fulbright or working with the Peace Corps. There's opportunities to be had there. You can also create an immersive environment just by yourself in your house. So your tech can transfer over, get your phone settings into your language, listen to the news in the language, find podcasts, music, movies, set your Netflix. My Netflix is all in French, so I can't tell my mother what movie I'm watching because it's listed in a different language. So there's ways for that as well. And then of course, if you're thinking about, and we can talk a little later about career opportunities and working really that into your professional life as well. But if this is something you love, you might consider becoming a language educator at the K-12 or college level.
Thank you, Erin. I love the number of options you've given us. There's no excuse for anyone not to come back and not practice their language anymore. Thank you. Simona, my next question is for you. What's your advice for students who don't feel confident in their language skills?
So first of all, don't be afraid of making mistakes. So this is my advice, because when you learn something new, you learn from making mistakes. It is part of the learning journey. Be patient, be open, optimistic, and always interested and committed. And above all, accept that the fact that you come from a different culture and your language structure is different from the one that you are learning. And only thanks to these mistakes, you will learn the new language. Also because certain mistakes are typical because of interference from your native language to the new language. So just don't worry, be proud of yourself, first of all, just because you are putting so much effort and energy in studying a new language that will be able to differentiate yourself from people that don't share probably the same passion you have. And practice. This is the only way to become more confident. Another strategy that I always use for myself, for example, is to prepare for conversations. Preparation in another language is a very powerful tool because it allows you to practice before and feel more confident when you have to speak, especially in public. And yes, so I always suggest my students, for example, to take the opportunity to practice regularly the language when they are with native speakers and engage in conversations, even if they don't feel confident. So one keyword is curiosity. Be curious to learn, and always take the opportunity to step out of your comfort zone.
Sorry. Thank you, Simona. I agree. Mistakes are the best way to learn things sometimes. Brent, my next question is to you. What are some tips or suggestions that you can give students who plan to study language abroad, or who want to study multiple languages?
Oh my gosh. Well, like, first of all, don't view your study abroad as this sort of like dream where you like went abroad and then you came home and then you have to follow this like American path or whatever it may be. Like, really try to incorporate from the beginning your life, like have a bigger picture, try to incorporate China or Spain or wherever it is into your life. For me, the biggest way that I do this is like being super active on social media. I know not everyone's a social media user, but like in China, like bam, social media, like on Instagram, I'm like following like Spanish meme pages and I'm like learning so many colloquialisms from just memes. It's really trivial, I know, but it's like, it keeps you super relevant. And when that language, when you have skin in the game and when that language feels like immediate to you, that's the best way I found to like keep it constant and keep it relevant and keep those like muscles moving. So, for me, like when I moved back to the US from China, I started the Asian Law Business Association. We were a culturally secular organization that focused on constructive engagement with mainland China. We partnered with an NGO to do policy advocacy work. And basically we would just go to China every year to like meet with attorneys and law firms and chambers of commerce and businesses. And this was just from like going on LinkedIn and messaging people and, using our contacts that we had. So I mean, it was just, unfortunately, a lot of what like I've done in my life has had to be like me taking the initiative to build bridges between the US and China. There aren't like, people are always like, oh, you're gonna have like such a successful career. Like there isn't yet like a standard. Like I don't have someone I can really look to be like, this is what a US China career looks like. So navigating that kind of space, like you have to really just keep yourself incredibly active. I've even participated in hackathons in Beijing, from some guy that I met in a train station once in Chengdu. We connected and turns out he was some Silicon Valley dude. And like, we would go to these like Google hackathons in Beijing and like present in Chinese. So, just like, I don't know, that's what I would recommend. Just like view it as your own culture in a way where you're engaging with the people, you're listening to the like culture bubbling up from the bottom by watching memes and watching TV or whatever it may be, whatever media you need. Music is a huge one for me. And then, that's it. Just keep being fresh.
Just discover as you go. Thank you, Brent.
Yeah.
I think we are close to our time. The time just flew today. Thank you to all the good stories. So if anybody has in the audience any questions, please feel free to type into the chat and we will open up the Q&A session soon. But for now, I have a question for you, Felix. What advice can you give someone who is looking to learn languages? I know you've studied on campus, you've studied online, you've studied languages in different formats. So do you have any advice for people who are interested in learning languages?
Well, where to begin? There's a whole bunch of tips you can take. And in some respects, it depends on the language. So studying Irish recently, it's about as least of a phonetic language as you can get. And while it won't be, the most in-demand language and all that, you have to spend time, learning the pronunciation before you can even make any headway, as in contrast to Italian, which is very phonetic, so less time needed with that language. But I would say certainly after this COVID experience, it has really shown me how much language is an interactive thing in person. and reminds me how new the internet still is for all of us, that language, is something that for thousands of years has been spoken around the campfire, has been used in the pub, has been so on and so forth, expressed face to face. So when it comes, well, I do respect resources like Italki, which is a website you can learn languages online, and it's a good resource if you want to learn a language that you can't find in your hometown, whether you're abroad or not. Language should certainly be viewed as a social thing and should be, made that way. As an English teacher, conversation is the most in-demand element of language learning, and part of it is because of that. And a lot of students come in learning sort of monotonous English that is not creative, that is, straightforward, and it's not reflecting how their native language is in when they're speaking in native speaker land. And so I certainly, well, to sum it up, I won't go on too long, it's running low on time, but don't be afraid to be creative, focus on confidence in the language. I think it was one person earlier said, I think it was Simona, said, don't be afraid. And yeah, confidence is a big one. And don't ignore the grammar. This is just my personal view, but it's helped retain the languages a lot better than not knowing the grammar. So it might be different with everybody, but yeah, I guess that's about it.
Thank you, Felix. I think we have a few audience questions here, so I'm going to jump straight to that. So one of the questions is, where did it go? I just lost it. Sorry, just give me a moment. What are affordable and accessible ways to learn a language if one cannot afford to study abroad? Does anybody want to take that?
I can jump in with
Yes, Erin.
a thought in the beginning here. So if you're able to have a language teacher in your life for part of that process, I do think it's helpful because you have kind of a partner in your mission here in the States, and that person can help direct you towards different opportunities. But if you don't have that person in your life right now, and or if you'd like to complement that, we actually have a lot of curated links on the Lead with Languages site. So it's leadwithlanguages.org. But you're able to look there, for example, for a tutor. Maybe you have an online experience with somebody who is abroad. And so you have that conversational partner who's able to give you real life experiences, and it feels more authentic when you've got an actual live person involved. Or look at community colleges in your local area that could also have language classes, even in less commonly taught languages, more and more. And that could be a good starting point, is something to do here domestically.
I agree with Erin. I agree with Erin. And I just want to add that now that the borders are reopening, also it's a good idea also to go in an international office and ask if there are international students attending the semester at your home university, so that you can be a language partner in your country and then also try to practice the language while you help the other student improving their English skills. So this is a very affordable solution.
Thank you, Simona. Thank you, Erin. Yes, Felix.
The biggest smartphone guy, I did use one app called Nemo to learn basic modern Greek with great success before I went to Greece. And if repetition helps, and that's another thing we have to understand, which strategies apply to our mind. But I find repetition helps, and if repetition helps you, programs like that, there are free ones you can find as well.
Thank you, Felix. Yes,
Brent. Can I address a question? I think Marissa asked a really brilliant question.
Yes.
Do you have any advice for staying motivated during the intermediate period of language learning? This is too real, because you hit a plateau at some point where your understanding of all the basics of the language is strong enough to where you feel like your learning slows down, and it's kind of less exciting because it's not like you're learning a new thing that you can go out and use daily, like maybe in the beginning. At that point for me, I also really felt like you feel this lack of encouragement. um, so I kind of transferred my interest in the language to an interest within the language. So like I would try to find topics or conversations within the language. So like this goes back to my wanting to be just keeping fresh and relevant. Like when you really have skin in the game, if you can achieve that, like have skin in the game where you feel like the cultural conversations and the things people are doing and saying in China, for example, are relevant to you and not so distant, it will be like you just using the language as a window. And over time, that exposure will that constant exposure will it'd be good, and you'll start to fill in little gaps, and then like a few months later or a year later you'll like reflect and realize, okay, I've been learning. But it is kind of hard. You just got to really stick to it. Consistency.
Consistency is the key. Thank you, Brent. I think we also, Felix also addressed the earlier question when someone asked about the apps, if the apps are useful. So I think he addressed that earlier. If anyone else has any other questions, or I can hand over to Amber.
Yeah, I think just in the essence of time, we might want to do a little wrap up here. I was taking a few notes during the panel today because I think it's important to reflect. So some just quick sound bites that I heard that I thought were really fantastic. From Brent, I heard work to merge language and your passions, right? He's working to find that intersection of law and technology and travel and language. So if you can do that, find that sweet spot for sure. I heard Simona say, just immerse in the culture. You'll make lifelong friends, and be proactive. Ask for help. There's sometimes challenges, right, when you're living abroad and trying out new languages, but that's okay. That's part of the process. I heard Erin say, and I loved this, maybe take your mom's advice. So I love that she was like, maybe just stay for a month, maybe just take a little tour, and love that that landed you in being lovingly named Lastrof. I think I'm saying that correctly. That was a wonderful story. Felix, I heard so many great little pieces of information from you today, but the thing that really stuck with me was sometimes the best approach is just to wing it. That's just where we are sometimes with language, and really just go with the flow. Let's see. I heard, oh my gosh, so many good things. It's a lifelong journey. From Brent, I heard one of his biggest takeaways from practicing Chinese is just learning how to be humble, which I absolutely loved. And then from Simona, also making mistakes is just part of the language journey. So thank you all to, of course, our panelists today. You were excellent. My co-moderator, Smriti, thank you. All of our participants today, and of course, all of our USAC colleagues showing support. I'd also like to highlight just a couple of upcoming opportunities. As part of our 40th anniversary celebration, we'll be highlighting many USAC programs throughout the year on our On Location series. So these events are open to both students and staff. You'll hear about what makes each program unique, including academics, cultural immersion, field trips, etc. And our next On Location program is starting right now, like in 1 minute. So Smriti is going to go ahead and post the link to that if you'd like to hop over and learn more about San Sebastian, Spain. And we'll also be offering another Spain on location opportunity highlighting our Bilbao program on Tuesday, April 26th at 10 a.m. So we hope to see you there again. Those links are in the chat now. And then one last thing, ahead of the panel, several of you indicated that you are interested in additional language resources. I think several of those resources were shared today, but I did want to share just many thanks to Erin for providing some fantastic links to check out as well. So thank you to Smriti. She's going to go ahead and post those in our chat. And I just wanted to say thank you again. What a fantastic conversation we had today. We really appreciate you all.
Gracias. Que les vaya bien.
Grazie mille.
Thank you, everyone. Shukriya.
Merci.